Welcome back to Zoe's Tropes. So I am notable among my friends to have a soft spot for the British Romantics. This summer is the 200th anniversary of the death of Percy Bysshe Shelley, one of the major English Romantic poets. To mark this occasion, I have watched all of the movies, all of the biopics that depict the story of the Villa Diodati, The Year Without a Summer. We're talking about the summer of 1816, when Mary and Percy Shelley went to visit Lord Byron in Geneva. There were ghost stories told, and Lord Byron proposes that they all write their own ghost story, and from that we have the famous novel Frankenstein. There don't seem to be any biopics about just Percy Shelley, even though I think he led a pretty interesting life. So who am I even talking about? Percy Bysshe Shelley was a young, radical English poet. He died at the age of 29 on the 8th of July, 1822. He was just about to turn 30. He died in a storm at sea off of the coast of Italy, where he and his friends were staying. You might know his poems Ozymandias, Ode to the West Wind, maybe Mont Blanc, Hymn to Intellectual Beauty. What nowadays makes Percy Shelley very famous is that he eloped with Mary Godwin while he was still married to his first wife. Mary Godwin, the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin, two famous philosophers. Mary's stepsister, Claire Clairmont, accompanied Mary and Percy when they left. They all went to Geneva to meet up with Lord Byron. And Lord Byron was staying in Geneva with John William Polidori, his physician, who was also an amateur writer. So all of these scandals around this group resulted in them having to basically flee England and go to Geneva. And they spent a lovely summer getting rained on and being very cold and telling ghost stories. Lord Byron, one evening after reading some of these ghost stories, says, "How about we all write a story of our own? Everyone go off and write their own story and then come back and we'll decide who wins." Polidori starts to write The Vampire, a novel that basically critiques Lord Byron's ability to suck the life out of everybody around him. Mary, after a few nights, has a nightmare that then inspires Frankenstein. I wanted to look at the representations of Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley and just look at the different ways that they're portrayed in these adaptations. I think it's really interesting how different filmmakers with different priorities of the stories that they're telling craft these characters in very different ways. So I watched The Bride of Frankenstein, Gothic, Haunted Summer, Rowing with the Wind, Mary Shelley, an episode of Doctor Who called The Haunting of Villa Diodati. Okay, so The Bride of Frankenstein. Not the whole movie, but I did watch the whole movie. But I was mostly looking at this opening scene. Mary, Percy, Byron, sitting around talking about the weather and ghost stories. And Mary has already written and published Frankenstein. Byron has this very bizarre accent.
A monster created from cadavers out of rifled graves.
But I love Elsa Lanchester as Mary just sitting around and saying like, "Oh, I'm such a little old lady."
Made me prick myself, Byron. It's bleeding.
Yes, I totally wrote Frankenstein.
Look at her, Shelley. Can you believe that bland and lovely brow conceived of Frankenstein?
So Percy's basically nothing. He's just like this little princely looking dude.
There.
Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't much there. The rest of the movie is just the second half of Frankenstein, and Elsa Lanchester comes back playing the Bride of Frankenstein, and it's great. I'd recommend it if you have a chance to check it out. Gothic. Gothic is directed by Ken Russell. If you know, you know. It's a bonkers 80s horror movie where basically the group on this fateful night, they accidentally bring a demon into the world. They summon like a spirit.
Brought it to life.
It chases them down and then they try to hunt it down for the rest of the night. Honestly, I really hate Timothy Spall as like this evil, sassy Polidori.
Sleep is nature's balm.
I just feel like that's where Josh Gad got his performance of LeFou from. I hate it. He sucks the energy out of every scene. But Natasha Richardson as Mary is amazing. I feel like she gets all of these contradictory aspects of Mary's life. She's reserved and compulsive, and she's refined and she's wild. She's a mother and a writer and a lover. She takes action, and also I love her dress. Julian Sands plays Percy. I think he did a great job as Percy. He's kind of unhinged, but kind of sweet. He still does readings at the Keats Shelley house in Rome, so clearly this is important to him. So in the end, Mary concludes that this monster that they've brought to life is going to haunt them until their deaths.
It's shown me the torture it has in store for us. Our creature. It will be there waiting in the shadows, in the shape of our fears, until it has seen us to our deaths.
Which we know are imminent, except for Mary and Claire. In the next year, Fanny, Mary's half-sister, dies by suicide, as does Percy's wife, Harriet, which then permits Mary and Percy to be married. A very young son also dies. In 1821, John Keats and John Polidori die. In 1822, Percy Shelley dies, as does the daughter of Claire and Byron. The movie Gothic proposes that the string of tragedy is due to the evil that they summoned that night. Okay, Haunted Summer. I think this might be my favorite adaptation of this story. It's more grounded than Gothic. The central conflict here is basically that this polyamorous squad must work together to defeat their toxic bisexual friend Byron. I was immediately captivated by this Mary and Percy, who are often, like, in these other movies, kind of overwhelmed by the Byron and sometimes Claire performances. So be Laura Dern kissed to sleep by the Shelleys. Alex Winter as Polidori. Love. Tragically, though, this is my least favorite Byron, weirdly. I just find he's too boring. He's just, I don't know, there's not a whole lot to work with.
I'll do something or other. I will, Shelley!
But the Byron-Polidori relationship is really disturbing and interesting, but, you know, still subtle enough not to be as annoying as it was in Gothic.
I have written a play. I think it quite good.
Do shut up, John.
I loved this really short scene that alludes to the fact that, like, Mary and Percy collaborate in their writing. I wish we saw more of that.
What do you think of this? Music by the night wind sent through strings of some still instrument, or moonlight on a midnight stream.
My thoughts are so clear one moment, and then the next. I'm writing, everything is muddled and strained and confused.
It will come.
I'm obsessed with, at the end, when Percy puts on the sunglasses. Rowing with the Wind. I'm not sure what this was about. I kind of hated it. The first half is the Diodati episode, which starts off with Byron's dog being murdered. I hate that. However, I do love Hugh Grant as Byron so much.
I shall sing you an Albanian song.
I love when he's mourning the dog and he just doesn't understand why nobody wants to be buried with his dog. It's like the greatest honor, and everyone's like, no, thanks, Byron.
Later we shall build a mausoleum, and I should like to rest here. But if you should die before I do, Fletcher, this honor shall fall to you.
Thank you, my lord.
I also hate the Shelley. I despise him. He just recites fun facts about Shelley just as his dialogue.
Percy Bysshe Shelley, atheist and Democrat.
For the whole movie.
I detest armies, my lord. They embody everything that is ugly and artificial. Armies are like judges. Or marriage. They are evil itself.
Win or lose, this world is worthless, and our only wisdom is woven with threads of disdain.
And we time jump to this series of deaths a few years later, and it's apparently due to the literal monster from Frankenstein coming to life and killing people. In Gothic, the thing that they summoned was really abstract and like barely even there. Was it real? Wasn't it real? Ooh, who knows? But in this one, it's painfully literal.
We shall meet in Greece, my lord.
And just seems really insensitive. It's a tricky argument when you're talking about people who are long dead. But I don't know, we're talking about children's deaths and suicides. It just feels, I don't know, I don't get what the point of it is also. If there's a larger storytelling point, I can see the argument for it. But what does it add to the story for the creature to literally be there? I always appreciate Byron walking into the sea at Shelley's funeral. I think if you put Hugh Grant's Byron in Haunted Summer...
Later we shall build a mausoleum, and I should like to rest here.
Perfect. And you put Wrong with the Wind in the garbage. Coming into the 21st century, I have strong thoughts about Mary Shelley, the movie. This should have been good. I don't know why it wasn't. The casting was great, the visuals were wonderful, there was a strong director, the dialogue and the story were, bad. I think Elle Fanning should have done a good job, but all the slow nature shots in the world couldn't help me figure out what her Mary was thinking about until she just, like, said her worldview out loud.
I have not inherited that strange deficit of hers. That foolish impulsiveness which mistook wretchedness with emancipation.
I have inherited nothing but a fire in my soul, and I will no longer allow you or anyone else to contain it.
She has no agency. This is just a movie where things happen to her. Douglas Booth, not a bad Percy guy. I thought I didn't like him at first because I was like, oh no, but like Percy's supposed to be like very elvish. You know, he acts past his hunkiness. I really buy him as an unhinged yet privileged radical.
You shall fear the Lord your God. Judgment seats and prisons, they are all part of one gigantic, despotic system designed to crush the soul of man.
I like that he's crying a lot of the time, or it looks like he's about to cry. I love that Mary says gay rights.
I believe with all my heart there are all sorts of ways of living, and I will fight for anyone's right to live accordingly.
I know that that's not actually historically inaccurate, but the way that she says it I think is just very funny. Byron's great, really. The best part of the movie, the only good part, is the Geneva episode.
The great art of life is sensation. To feel that you exist, even in pain. And would you not die for love? After all, what is life if it does not have love?
Nothing, according to you poets.
Play us a tune, Shelley.
I did find it quite funny when Mary explains Frankenstein to Percy.
It has so much potential. I just have one question. The doctor, he gets all these body parts, and he sews them together in order to make the most perfect creature. But when he brings it to life, essentially what he's created is a kind of monster. Imagine if he could create the perfect being. In doing so, he could show what man can be. He creates a version of ourselves that shines with goodness, and thus delivers a message for mankind.
It is a message for mankind.
Well, I mean a message of hope and of perfection.
What would we know of hope and perfection?
I like to give him a little bit more credit than that usually, but it was funny. And I did appreciate it in contrast to Claire getting it right away.
I've never read such a perfect encapsulation of what it feels to be abandoned. I seethed with your monster's rage. It lasted for his revenge. Because it wasn't my own. How many souls will sympathize with your creature's torments? More than should, I expect.
I thought that was actually a really nice touch. This movie, it's like, I don't know what it's about. The title is Mary Shelley. Ostensibly, it's about Mary Shelley. However, the movie that we got is not. It was interesting to take the Book of Frankenstein and kind of work backwards. What events in Mary's life led her to become so isolated to create this novel? But, like, why was Percy then the focus of it?
The only claim I remotely have to this work is inspiring the desperate loneliness that defines Frankenstein's creature.
Is it about Mary and Percy, or is it about Frankenstein? It's like about both, but neither. Or they could have just focused on the romance, in which case the resolution makes no sense. Is Percy outing Mary as the author, or acknowledging that Mary's the author? Why is that the climax, or like the resolution to all of this movie? Because my favorite part of that scene is that nobody reacts.
Of course. Mary Wollstonecraft, Godwin.
He's just saying this to like 5 dudes who have no reaction to this information. I don't think Percy at any point thought that he had written Frankenstein. And then she says, like, my choices made me who I am, but she didn't choose anything in this whole movie. The only choice she made was to leave with Percy and bring Claire with her. Is that what made her her? That's really upsetting.
But I underestimated the depths of despair and the weight of regret we were to endure.
I lost everything to be with you, Percy. We set out to create something wonderful. Behold, the monster. Galvanized. My choices made me who I am. And I regret nothing.
Tragedy was the thesis. Creating something beautiful out of tragedy, why not take it further? They cut out a lot of the tragedies. They could have done more. It might seem a little over the top to, like, that was her life. That was what happened. I don't even know what this movie's about. What was it trying to do? Last one, Doctor Who. So the Doctor and friends, this is the 13th Doctor, so quite recent. The Doctor and friends travel to that fateful night at Diodati.
You know, a bit of blood and guts, thrown a corpse for good measure. Float anyone's boat.
I do have a pet peeve throughout all of these adaptations and a lot of biopics about literary figures where the characters will, like, quote their own work as dialogue. Like, they'll quote from their poems or their journals as just responses to normal things that other people say. Doctor Who's the only thing that gets a pass because it is for kids. Casting for Byron and Claire and Polidori, perfect.
And then proceeded to use my person as a human shield.
And?
And the spell is broken, my lord.
I think something that threw off a lot of people about this episode is that ostensibly it's about Mary and the creation of Frankenstein, but we barely see her do anything. The story's actually about the importance of Percy in the fate of the world.
His thoughts, his words, inspire and influence thousands for centuries. If he dies now, who knows what damage that will have on future history? Save the poet. Save the universe.
Mary gets fleshed out originally as, like, kind of a fun-loving, like, dancing young mom, which I like.
Or perhaps another quadrille. I shall choose the music.
That's actually a really cool move, but it actually kind of goes too far in that you basically have to be told that she wrote Frankenstein. We don't really get any part of her that would be inclined to do so. It's like it just happens accidentally. You only get that, the sense that she would write Frankenstein in this extremely literal scene, which again I hate, of her going up to the Cyberman and like, my modern Prometheusing it.
This is not a good time to talk. Our names? Are you several men? A composite of parts?
I am better than men.
Yet I still see a soul in there. You didn't want to be this way. They hurt you. As modern Prometheus.
They have a lot to condense into a very small part of the episode. I get it, but still, I can be mad about it. Okay, so if I didn't like most of these depictions, what is my ideal Year Without a Summer movie? Actually, it wouldn't be a movie, and it actually wouldn't be about the Year Without a Summer at all. Would love to see a mini-series, a limited series, about the shared lives of Percy and Mary. It's about their collaboration and their mental health struggles, and goes beyond Percy's death, because that is not where Mary's story ends. Timothy Chalamet as Percy. Mary. So Sophie Turner was going to play Mary Shelley in a biopic around the same time as the Elle Fanning Mary Shelley. Then it stopped. I think Sophie Turner could have done an awesome job. If not, Daisy Edgar Jones. She has that face where, like, you can tell that she's thinking things. But she has really cool facial expressions, I find, that would convey a lot of that complex interiority that is inherent to, I think, portraying Mary Shelley. I don't have strong feelings about a Byron casting. There's a movie coming out called Mary's Monster. Sebastian D'Souza was cast as Byron, and I think that could be really cool. I liked him on other things I've seen, and he's got that vulnerable charisma that I think you need to play Byron. Okay, here's my rating. So for the portrayal of Mary Shelley, worst, Mary Shelley. Then Doctor Who, Rowing with the Wind, Bride of Frankenstein, Haunted Summer, Gothic. I feel like Percy's done the dirtiest, because sometimes they write him off as like a side character, like just Mary Shelley's husband, which I find very funny. I can appreciate. And then sometimes they actually like lean really hard into his radicalness and the free love thing. There's a lot of different Percys that we're dealing with. Bride of Frankenstein at the bottom, he didn't need to be there at all. It could have just been a conversation between Byron and Mary. Rowing with the Wind, Doctor Who, Mary Shelley, Gothic, Haunted Summer. That was my viewing experience. Those were my thoughts. I don't know if this is a relatable video, but someone make a good movie about the Shelleys, please. Haunted Summer was the closest, but like, I think we can do better. Let's strive for better. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.